Welcome back to part 4 of The Day After Roswell. My name is Klaus. Yes, I am the Grousing Gazer, and I'll be your host and narrator for this video. This is going to be such a mind-blowing episode because we're going to see an alien autopsy and discuss the alien spacecraft. But first, let's see how quickly we can review part 3. We saw items 2 through 5 from Corso's nut file, which were collected from the Roswell crash debris. That was quick. Let's start the autopsy segment. Both Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, ufologists, went to Roswell to investigate the crash. Let's see what they have to report.
What crashed at Roswell was not of this earth. This has been confirmed to us by scores of witnesses who witnessed the craft and its deceased occupants.
Real dead aliens? Now we're talking.
There were up to 5, 6, 7 bodies found at 3 locations, we believe. It wasn't until just a few years ago that we found out that Mac Brazel, who found the original wreckage, also found bodies at a site just a few miles from the debris field.
And how do they know this? Tom and Don talked to witnesses and their daughters and brothers and grandchildren.
Corso told you there were alien bodies at the crash site. Now, Roswell mortician Glenn Dennis has an interesting story to tell.
Around 24 hours have passed since Roswell mortician Glenn Dennis visited the base, seeing strange activity. He's returning to Hangar 84 because he's concerned for a nurse friend who works in the hospital wing.
Glenn Dennis's friend invited him to come back to the base to meet him for lunch. She said she had something very important that she wanted to tell him.
This story is Glenn Dennis's most jaw-dropping claim for why there was a Roswell cover-up.
She looked like death warmed over. She said, "You won't believe what happened." She said, "But I've never seen anything so this." I said, "Well, look, you're a nurse." And I said, "Anytime you're in this business, you're going to see a lot of things." And I said, "You may as well get used to it." She said, "No, this is what it is."
Then, the words that come out of her mouth next leave Dennis absolutely stunned.
She said, "This is something that no one's ever seen."
48 hours after being removed from Hangar 84, Glenn Dennis returns to the airfield. He's arrived to speak with a friend, a nurse in the hangar's hospital wing. It's a conversation Dennis recalls for the shocking revelation conspiracy theorists have been trying to corroborate for almost 30 years.
There wasn't anyone around us because we kind of had a table up on the side of the office of ourselves. She was hoping that we could hear us.
Glenn has been outspoken for decades about what he has seen, and of course his testimony has been dismissed and discredited by the experts.
She said, "You have to give me a sacred oath that you will not ever mention my name or not." She said, "You can get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm going to tell you, you don't know where you got this." I said, "What do you mean by sacred oath?" She said, "I mean like cutting your arm off." That's what she told me.
Glenn asks the nurse, he said, "What was going on? What did you see?" But he said she was afraid to verbalize anything. She's looking around and worried somebody's going to hear what she's telling him.
What happened, she was going into this other room to pick up some supplies. This is where the 2 doctors that were in there supposedly doing a preliminary autopsy on these bodies. The doctor said, "You're not going anywhere. We have to have some help." She said she never smelled anything so horrible in her life. Said it was the most gruesome, most horrible sight that she'd ever seen. The smell was almost devastating.
Glenn's additional testimony from the nurse is that there was a terrible stench coming from the bodies, and they were getting sick. They were going into the hallway and then returning to complete their duties, complete their work.
The testimony of this nurse is of great import because we have somebody who is witness to an actual autopsy. So that means we have fatalities of a crash and descriptions of beings that are clearly not human. The government is in possession of extraterrestrial beings.
She said, this is something that no one's ever seen.
The alien autopsy at Roswell has always been one of the most contentious parts of the Roswell story. Reason for many skeptics to dismiss all of Glenn Dennis's testimony as untrue.
Of all the many, many witnesses with stories to tell about Roswell, his have been perhaps the ones that have been disbelieved most. If that testimony is absolutely truthful, then we are in new territory here. We are in this situation now where arguably the most extreme part of this whole tale is validated.
She said, this is something that no one's ever seen. The two doctors that were in there supposedly doing a preliminary autopsy on these bodies. She said there was 3 bodies. 2 of them were very mangled.
Can this testimony be trusted?
2 of them were very mangled.
According to the AI, Glenn Dennis is telling the truth.
This is groundbreaking. It's going to take me a while to get my head around this. It's fascinating.
Look at that. The artificial intelligence lie detection has confirmed that Glenn Dennis was telling the truth. Now that the dead alien bodies and an alien autopsy has been verified, we can proceed. I realize that the alien body in the next video clip may or may not be real. The video portion doesn't matter. It is a visual aid to help you visualize what was described in the autopsy report from Corso's nut file that was given to him by General Trudeau. The nut file is real and the autopsy report is real. Now, let's go see what they discovered. Corso stated, quote, "We should consider the EBEs, as described in the medical autopsy reports, as humanoid robots rather than life forms, engineered for long-distance travel through space or time. The skin was a thin layer of fatty tissue, completely permeable. Corso speculated they didn't require food or waste facilities because they weren't actually life forms, only a kind of robot or android. The bones appeared to be fibrous, thinner than human bones, but more flexible and more resilient to behave like shock absorbers." Walter Reed medical examiners hypothesized that the EBEs died very slowly because it possessed a very slow metabolism, evidenced by the enormous capacities of the huge heart and lungs. The physiology, the body didn't have to work hard to sustain it. The heart took fewer beats than an average human heart to drive the thin, milky, almost lymphatic-like fluid through a limited, more private-looking, and apparently reduced capacity circulatory system. Our atmosphere is quite toxic to the creature's organs. Based on the time that passed between the crash of the vehicle and the creature's arrival at Walter Reed, it decomposed all the organs far more rapidly than it would have decomposed human organs. Pathologists were unable to determine with any certainty the structure of the creature's heart. The EBE's heart seemed to have had an internal diaphragm-like muscles that worked less hard than a human's heart did, because the creatures were meant to survive within a reduced gravity field. The lungs behaved like a camel's hump or scuba tanks, releasing atmosphere very slowly into the creature's system. Given the size of the heart, it was surmised the creature needed less breathable atmosphere. The lungs occupied a higher percentage of the chest cavity than humans. Military reported that the two surviving creatures had difficulty breathing our atmosphere. Blood and lymphatic systems seem to have been combined. There were no digestive or waste systems. The exchange of nutrients/waste must have occurred through the skin. The EBE's brains were oversized in comparison to human brains. Witnesses reported empathic impressions from the aliens. Their impressions were that it was simpler than a sentence, but more complex. Impressions of pain, suffering, profound sadness, as if the alien was mourning the loss of others on board, were felt by the witnesses. No words were heard in the witnesses' minds. The skull was spongy like cartilage instead of hard bone. John Lear, son of Bill Lear of Learjet, spoke of the Roswell autopsy during an interview. Let's see what he had to say.
Interesting things in the autopsy. I'll just read a couple. 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, 2 round eyes without pupils, no earlobes, nose is vague, neck described as being thin, arms is described long and thin, reaching down to the knee section. You can see that there was a webbed portion in the hands, no teeth, no apparent reproductive organs, brain capacity unknown, colorless liquid prevalent in the body without red cells, no lymphocytes.
The military claimed that the alien bodies found at Roswell were actually parachute test dummies. Given what we heard in this video, it didn't sound like test dummies to me. What do you guys think? The military also claims that the spaceship recovered was actually a mogul balloon. I think Major Jesse Marcel, the 509th's intelligence officer, would know the difference between a balloon and a spacecraft. His son, Jesse Marcel Jr., has some comments about that and will bring us into the spaceship segment.
There's still a feeling like there's something very unusual about this. It was not something commonplace like they would like to say weather balloon or radar turret.
The Marcells, to me, are at the center of everything with the Roswell story, and any indication we can get to substantiate the claims that have been made by the Marcells just further adds to the credible, reliable testimony we have related to this incident.
Your father didn't think it was a weather balloon or a radar target?
Never did.
Jesse Marcel Jr.'s claim about his father is predicted to be true.
Well, looks like Major Corso does know the difference between a balloon and a spacecraft. Now, I'd like to show you 5 pictures of the Roswell spacecraft from 3 different sources. Picture 1 is the spacecraft under a tarp in Hangar 3 at S4. Picture 2 is a drawing of that spacecraft under a tarp in Hangar Bay 3 at S4. Picture 3 is an ARV, alien reproduction vehicle of the Roswell spacecraft. in essence a man-made version of it. Picture 4 is Thomas Cantwell's drawing as found in Michael Sala's book. Picture 5 is a sketch of the spacecraft found in the video The Evidence. What I'd like you to do is notice the similarities. Let's go back to the day after Roswell, where we find Corso wondering how the EBEs piloted the ship. There were no navigational controls such as control sticks, wheels, throttles, pedals, cables, flaps, or rudders. He also wondered what protected the EBEs from the tremendous G-forces, considering the spacecraft went from 0 to 7,000 miles an hour. There were no controls, no protection, no power supplies, no fuel. Corso goes to Werner von Braun, Hans Köhler, Hermann Oberth, and John von Neumann for his answers. The craft and jumpsuits were covered in the same fabric that behaved like electrical circuits because the atomic structure was elongated, which strengthened lengthwise so as to provide a directional flow to any current that was applied to it. Headbands were found at the crash site, and it was believed that the brain waves provided the commands to control the spacecraft's navigation and thrust. The headbands had contacts inside of some kind of plastic which fit around the head just above the ears. There were no button switches or wires. They were not manually adjustable, but had elasticity, so one size would fit all. Should you wear a headband, you would receive a shock, anywhere from a low tingling sensation to searing headaches. Should you close your eyes, you'd see dancing and exploding colors of light inside your eyelids. Thank you for watching part 4 of the day after Roswell. Due to the length of this video, the grouse will move to part 5 with additional information from other sources. We will begin part 5 by exposing what the presidents and generals knew regarding the Roswell situation. Thanks again for watching, and look out for part 5.
Oh, we're not gonna take it.